please.
Okay.
I don't have the list in front of me. I don't have their names in front of me. I'm glad to, but I don't have a list.
Okay, are we live, BevCam? Yes. Okay. I am welcoming you this evening to Beverly Public School Committee's regular school committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 13th. We are meeting in a hybrid model today using a remote meeting application that's being provided at no cost to our district, and BevCam is broadcasting us tonight to allow full public access to the open portions of this meeting. This is allowed under the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order entitled Order Suspending Certain Provisions of Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. This order specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We encourage viewers to use the BevCam streaming options this evening, if possible. We are also trying out a captioning tool while a longer-term, better solution is created citywide. Tonight is a regular school committee meeting, which means we have an agenda item for addressing the body during our meeting. We encourage constituents to email citizenconcerns@beverlyschools.org right now to be sent a link to the Zoom meeting to be recognized. Alternately, the chair could read your email. Remarks should be limited to about 3 minutes in length. We anticipate reaching this agenda item by 7:10 p.m. So if you've not already done so, please email to be invited to speak or to share your thoughts. Joining us tonight are members of the school committee in person, as well as various members of the district administration and leadership teams. We also have members participating online, and I want to let our student rep in right now. There we go. I will take a full roll call attendance in a moment for the record, since it's not always apparent who's joining with us over the application. I want to remind all participants that any audio or video that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record, so please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises, and the chair will call for you to unmute when you are recognized. Okay, members, I'd like to conduct a roll call so we can confirm that we all can hear and see each other. I think the school committee members are actually all present that we anticipate. We have Dr. Ken Ann McKenzie joining us. Welcome. Ms. Kimberly Coelho, Ms. Karen Robinson, Ms. Lorinda Visnick, and I am Rachel Abel. We are also joined by Dr. Sue Chirocek, Ms. Donna Bergeron, Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. Online, we have Ms. Jean Sherburne. Oh, I see Mayor Mike Cahill is joining us electronically. We have Dr. Andre Morgan. Okay, I see Ms. Lisa Oliver, Ms. Betty Taylor, I see Ms. Christina Leal, thank you, and Ms. Bethany Splansky and Dana Krushenk. And we have Jaslyn Abbott, who is our student rep. Mayor Mike Cahill, can you confirm that you can see and hear us this evening?
I can. I see some of you are at the middle school. I'm stuck in 2 meetings, so I'm going to be a little bit in and out. If the other one gets done before we're done, I'll drive over and join you in person.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I think that's who I am seeing online participating, and of course BevCam. Okay, so that's our record for the moment of our attendance. Since we do have a remote member participating from the school committee, all of our votes and actions will be roll call vote while we're having a remote participant. And for our roll call votes, the chair calls in alphabetical order with the chair going last. We do anticipate tonight going into a very, very brief executive session and returning to open session. And so what this means for us in this remote setting, I'm letting Ms. June Casey's in. In this remote setting, we are going to ask our friends at BevCam to actually silence the audio tracks and put up the recess note. So there will be a brief interruption in the broadcast and streaming where you will not be participating in the closed session of the meeting, but we anticipate returning to open session for 2 votes very shortly after that. So just be prepared. Sure.
There are some students trying to get in and looking for a password.
Okay, it's today's date, 01132021. I'm not quite sure why it's asking for the password, but, okay, sure. So we'll let those students join us. The first order of business for us this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to put Dr. McKenzie on the spot and ask her to lead us in the pledge. Our flag is right here, if you would. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay. While we are waiting for some students to join us, why doesn't the committee take care of some housekeeping? We have the approval of meeting records. This was our December 9th regular school committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, I'm going to go with Ms. Robinson and Ms. Coelho. No offense, I'll get you next time. Were there any edits, corrections, concerns? No? Okay, so we will call the roll, and that will begin with Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
and then Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
and alphabetically, I think Ken Ann McKenzie's next,
Yes.
and Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
and Rachel Abel. Okay, I'm seeing some students, I'll just let them in. And I would note that John Milady is absent this evening. Okay, the motion passes. We're still waiting for a couple more students to join. Why don't we do items by consensus quickly? You'll note on your agenda that we have warrants letters A through F presented in various amounts. I would entertain a motion to approve the warrants.
So moved.
There you go, Ms. Visnick. And a second? Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Okay, are there any questions? It's pretty standard, items by consensus. We'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
He's maybe in his other meeting.
He might be in his other meeting. We'll circle back. Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie? Karen Robinson?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. Mayor Cahill, one more chance. Okay, the vote is 5-0. Okay, let's see how many students we have. Let's see, we have. Okay. Jaslyn, would you mind if we go to your report next while we just wait to see if we can collect a couple more of the students that we anticipate recognizing?
Sure. So I'll just start off with what I have.
Yes, please.
So starting December 15th, so picture retakes began, and students in each cohort were given the opportunity to retake their school photos during the school day. And that same day, there is a remote schedule, so inclement weather for remote schedule, and snow days will be replaced by remote learning days. But this does not apply if the district experiences powder outages for most of the people in Beverly. December 16th through the 18th was the NHS Elf fundraiser. So you can purchase $2 holiday seasonal treats and with your own special messages and send them to students and teachers throughout the school. December 21st to the 23rd and January 4th through the 8th was when students attended school fully remote before the break and after the break. December 22nd was the BHS virtual winter concert. So on Comcast channel 22 at 7 p.m., BevCam broadcasted the winter concert, and it was also available later on at night at 8, 9, and 10, and it's also available on YouTube. December 21st through January 7th was the parent-teacher conference. So the conferences were held virtually, and students, parents, and the teachers could talk about academics. January 7th was the school discussions on events of January 6th at the Capitol building. Ms. Taylor put out a video for teachers to show students in their A-block classes. This prompted each class to have discussions about the tragedy that occurred in Washington, D.C. the day prior. January 8th is basketball season, so the BHS boys basketball seasons began with games at the homes against Masconomet, BHS 1 varsity, JV, and freshman games. And January 9th was BHS gymnastics, so Beverly beat Peabody 122 to 82. As well as January 10th was the boys ice hockey opener, 4-1 win versus Gloucester. And as well as January 11th, we returned to hybrid learning. So it started with cohort 2, which returned to the building first, and each cohort was welcomed with hot chocolate and cookies the following days. So some upcoming events was the potential hybrid schedule changes that are state mandated, as well as PSATs and quarter 2 ending January 29th and third quarter beginning February 1st. Just some updates from student council. Before, we were focusing more on clarifying the remote schedule, as well as when we watched the videos discussing the January 6th events at the Capitol building. And more recently, we've been focusing on the MLK Day video, which was organized by the City of Beverly Human Rights Committee. And we created a video featuring student council members sharing different quotes from Dr. King. Do you have any questions?
That was a very good report. Thank you for the great job reporting out. Do members have any questions for Jaslyn? No? Okay, if you want to stay, we're going to recognize some of your fellow classmates for their all-star recognitions with sports. And as always, you're welcome to drop off at any time you need to get to your homework this evening. We appreciate the time that you spend with us. Okay, Ms. Taylor, I see that we have Olivia Young, Jamie DuPont, Julia Ottenbein, and Max Murphy with us.
Oh, great.
Oh, Emily? Okay. Okay.
Why don't I present their awards first,
Okay.
and then I'll go through the list of the other students. And I do want to apologize ahead of time. I have a list that the formatting, I think, is a little off, so I hope I don't identify the incorrect award or the incorrect sport. You said that Emily Young is joining us, and Emily Young, we're recognizing her tonight. She received the award of the Salem News All-Star Recognition for cross country. So congratulations, Emily. You also said Julia Ottenbein is with us. Julia also received the Salem News All-Star recognitions for her work in field hockey. Congratulations to Julia. Max Murphy received the Salem News All-Star recognition for his participation in golf. Congratulations, Max. And I'm sorry, Ms. Abel, was there one other student you mentioned?
So we have Jamie DuPont and Olivia Young as well.
Oh, excuse me. Olivia also is cross country, Salem News All-Star recognition. Congratulations, Olivia. And you said Jamie DuPont.
Jamie for field hockey.
Yes. Yes. Jamie, I'm sorry, I apologize. All-Star recognition from Salem News for her work in field hockey as well. Congratulations. So that's good news for our students that are here. Yes, yay. Round of
Yeah,
applause.
I was so happy to see that we had a fall season and that we had so much success out there in the fields.
Yes, we did. A few other names, I'll just read them off.
Sure.
For cross country, Mia Kasprowitz. For boys soccer, Teo Verbeck, Ian Visnick, and Nick Brancana, who I believed also received the Salem News Player of the Year. For girls soccer, Sydney Anderson and Kaylee Crowell. and also Heidi Eberhardt, who received the All-State New England Soccer Coaches Association Award. And I believe, again, I'm making sure that my formatting's off a little bit, the Salem News Player of the Year. So congratulations to all our athletes. It was a nice season. It was great to see kids play, and we're looking forward to what our winter athletes earn. Thank you.
So can I correct just
Yep.
I'm going to correct just your formatting on one thing. So Heidi Eberhardt received the Salem News Player of the Year for cross country. And then Nick Braganka. Did I say that right? Braganka received the Salem News Player of the Year, All-State and New England Soccer Coaches Award, and the Globe and Herald All-Scholastic. So we would be remiss if we didn't recognize that as a huge,
Absolutely.
huge honor for him and for his accomplishments on the soccer field this year. So
Thank you for correcting that. That's a lot I left off. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Taylor, and thank you, athletes. As I told Jaslyn Abbott, I'm sure you have homework to do. We are so thankful that you joined us here at the school committee meeting this evening in our hybrid model, and you're welcome to log off, but can't wait to see what else you do. Thank you. Okay. We have reached about 7:10. Actually, we've exceeded that. And I would like to ask Ms. Bergeron if she had received any emails indicating interest for public speakers. Okay. I think that brings us down to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the school committee chair updates. The first thing I would like to do is to extend a warm welcome and introduction to Dr. Ken Ann McKenzie this evening. She was appointed to fill the balance of the Ward 2 representative seat to the school committee. She was appointed by a joint council of the City Council and the school committee on December 17th, and she started officially on January 1st, 2021. Last week, she joined us at the Curriculum Instruction and Student Life meeting, where I announced her appointment to fill the vacancy on that standing committee. As she has shared with us, she is coming to the committee with a wealth of experiences, not only from her professional life, but also as a parent to children within our district. She has prior experience working with the Brookline School Committee during the pandemic reopening planning process, and is the current director of the Aspire Institute at Boston University, whose primary goal is to support pre-K to 12 educational sector with professional development based in social justice framework and community engagement, as well as a whole host of other things. I know she keeps extremely busy. So thank you, Dr. McKenzie, for joining us in this work. Welcome.
welcome.
Okay. We have one more vacancy to fill this evening, and by our policies, we'll have to accept nominations from the floor for the position of secretary for the balance of our term. The chair cordially notes that we do have an English teacher among us, and that might be an excellent candidate. So I am accepting nominations at this point. Are there any?
President,
Yes.
I would like to nominate Ms. Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, do you accept that nomination?
I accept that nomination. Thank you.
Accept the nomination. Do we have any other nominations at this point? Hearing none, we will have a roll call vote. I don't know if Mayor Cahill is back with us. I don't see him at this time. So we'll mark absent. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Yes. Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
John Malady is also absent. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Oh, good. Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. By a vote of 5-0, congratulations, you are now our secretary.
Thank you.
Okay. And along those lines, I have to just cheat back to my agenda. We had adopted at our last meeting the school committee and superintendent protocols. So it was included in your packet in the formatting, and I hope I found all the typographical errors that we had discussed. Formatted this document. I'll have Ms. Bergeron just update the title of secretary next to your name. And then we've actually started using a tool for electronic signatures. And so expect to see a request to apply your signature to these protocols. So hopefully, Dr. McKenzie, you have had an opportunity to review our work from the end of last year and are agreeable to join on with our commitment to each other. Next. Okay. Oh, I did jump over one. Okay. So our body has the responsibility annually to evaluate the superintendent. And before too much more time passes, we will need to begin the process for the past year. Tonight, we wanted to remind folks that we, in our last term, had decided to use the new evaluation rubric that's available for superintendents. Dr. Churchick in the last school committee had selected indicators that aligned with her entry plan, which also aligned with our district improvement plans. So we will begin that work. And I have the great pleasure to have the support of Dr. Flaherty and Donna Bergeron. To avoid running afoul with open meeting law, it's best if we have someone consolidate and compile the responses from each of the individual members so that we can have a streamlined report that we're able to discuss in open session. So the evaluation actually has the indicators outlined, and it gives us a chance to put in short responses. And so I think the timeline that we're looking at is to actually provide that form to the school committee members shortly after this meeting and allow the members to review the evidence that will be in a shared drive to provide our evaluation back to Dr. Flaherty and Ms. Bergeron by the 27th, so by our next committee of the whole meeting. And that will allow them to have some time to compile and consolidate the feedback from each of us. And then we will be picking that up at our committee of the whole meeting. Is it committee of the whole meeting? Is that the time?
So I think it was that I would get everything to you by the 27th.
Oh, okay.
You would get everything back to Dr. Flaherty by the 8th.
By the 8th, okay.
And then she will have it all ready and to you to do whatever you need to do so that we could do it in the meeting on the 24th.
At the 24th.
February 24th.
I was
And I will
rushing
also
you.
have
Okay.
and we'll also do the goals at that. We'll have the goals go
Okay.
through that too.
Yes, and yeah, it is worth mentioning, we also need to establish Dr. Churchick's goals for this year, and that due to COVID, the DESE has provided some guidance on the indicators already. So the negotiating committee will work to bring forward the recommendation with Dr. Churchick on those, also at an upcoming meeting. Okay. If you do have questions, I know Dr. Flaherty's experienced in the evaluation process, and she would be the best person to answer any questions you have about the process. But hopefully with some of the ways that they've outlined this and set this up, I think Dr. Churchick did a really good job. When you see this, when you receive this, you will see what the indicators are, which ones were selected, and have some clear direction of what your job is. Okay. Next, E. Oh, this one. I thank Ms. Visnick for allowing the regular school committee meeting to approve the additional appropriation of $867,863 of the Chapter 70 money that came through once the Commonwealth passed its budget for FY20. Normally, we would process this through the F&F committee first, get a recommendation, but I think we all recognize that it will come highly recommended from that committee, so we're here tonight. I will entertain a motion to approve the additional appropriation of $867,863 and to place it into 3 accounts. These are OT accounts. The first is OT 118-61189, reserve for negotiations. The second is OT 075-61235 for remote learning salaries. And the third is OT 800-62812, and this is for unemployment compensations.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Are there any questions about this additional appropriation, accepting it into our budget? Okay, I don't see any online questions. I should just move this participants window a little bit. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill, I don't see him with us, so we'll mark absent. Kimberly Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel? Yes. Passes 5-0. And last but not least, our upcoming meeting dates. The only real notable one I have for this group, the whole group, is the Committee of the Whole. That will be on the 27th. We do anticipate having 4 important votes, so I hope to see you all here or virtually. And with that, Dr. Chirocek, I believe you're up next with your reports.
All right, so I'm going to share the screen if that is, okay. Share. All right. So again, I've compiled my information into the report. I'm learning to, I like this the best. And so we have some items that were that are on the agenda. One of the first is the reopening update. I will give a quick update for you in terms of our dashboard numbers, so to speak, as I've been kind of customarily doing. Tonight I'm going to bring some information forward regarding the student learning time regulations. And as well as, I think Dr. Flaherty is going to help me with when we had presented in a previous meeting the results of the parent survey for elementary. Tonight we have results from the middle school and the high school surveys that were administered. And then also Dr. Flaherty is going to walk us through a set of data reports. These are reports that were presented, this presentation was presented at one of the curriculum and instruction meetings earlier, but was requested that we bring it to the meeting, to the larger group, so that everybody has an opportunity. And I think you'll find it really enlightening around some of the work that's being done in the schools. So I'm going to begin first with just a quick update where we are in terms of COVID cases in our district. At this point on 1/12/20, and it should say 21. I keep doing that, so I think there should be a club, everyone that has forgotten to write 21 at the end of the word. At this point, we still have no evidence that there has been any transmission that's related to in-person attendance in any of our schools in Beverly. And as always, we continue to contact trace all instances of positive cases that are reported to us. And then this is the data from the dashboard. The dashboard is always available on our website, so it's kept up to date by our school nurses. She updates it, I believe, Mondays and Thursdays, but maybe it's pretty close to that. And so this is just a summary of the data that's up there. To date, we have had 157 reported positive cases that would be associated with the Beverly schools. 136 of those cases have completed their this is all the way back to the beginning. That's the running tally. Those cases have completed the isolation period and have returned to school or work. 21 of those cases are still actively out and remain in isolation, and we continue to contact trace. I actually think some of those, even today, came off of the list in terms of completing their period of quarantine. However, I want to reiterate that all 21 cases right now that are active cases are remote cases, and that's due to our pivot to remote learning these past weeks. What we consider a remote case is a case where an individual has not been in our school for the past 7 days. So those are all right there. So that's just a summary of the data that's on our dashboard. I also just wanted to summarize for you, we again conducted surveillance testing for the City of Beverly employees in partnership with the city. And so on January 5th and January 6th, we tested approximately 500 city employees and their families, and that included in that tally school employees. And again, thanks to Mayor Cahill and the Cataldo ambulance with whom we partnered for testing. I would say this round of employee testing was even smoother than the first, which was actually pretty smooth. So there were no lines for waiting. They utilized a system where people were given a 5-minute time slot, so we avoided any large gatherings of crowds while they were waiting to get in. Results were returned to us within 24 hours. And so all in all, it was a very positive experience. And I think we took from the information and our experience that we believe that our shift to remote instruction for the period of time preceding and following the holiday really has allowed us to return safely to in-person instruction. It was one of the things that we watched closely and had a sort of mini meeting on Sunday. We had always anticipated returning to in-person on the 11th, but we wanted to make sure that we had this opportunity to do, to kind of do some surveillance testing testing for our staff. And again, and I will say it every time I have the opportunity, we're really grateful to the families and to our staff for their vigilance in complying with the safety measures. Then that most importantly includes sort of self-monitoring for symptoms and remaining home if there's exposure to household cases or if there's a question. We really appreciate that everyone has been operating on the side of caution in all instances, and it's really helped, I think, to allow us to continue to not have issues with spread and transmission in our schools. And I don't have this on the slide, but I did just want to maybe make a nod to the idea that I know there's been a lot of talk about pooled testing and opportunity for pooled testing through the Department of Ed. We are looking into it. We have attended the webinar. We have a meeting tomorrow that includes the Board of Health, our district pediatrician, and some municipal employees as well, just to kind of take a look at is this the right method for testing for Beverly, or is there a different method that we should be examining, or is there a need for a structured testing plan? So that meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, and so I'll be coming forward with more information on that. And I see a question.
Thank you, Dr. Trochek. I think we had talked previously about whether our school system might join the testing program, and previously it was probably not, right? So appreciate the fact that you're re-examining that. However, Jean maybe will be happy to hear me say, right, my understanding is if we join that program, the first 6 weeks would be paid for by the state. And then after that, we would have to pick up the additional cost ourselves. To that extent, have you begun the process of looking at where we would get the funds, how we would pay for that testing then to continue?
So the first step that we want to take is to take a look at the actual program itself. There are some subtleties to the new plan that's put out that we have some concerns about in terms of the pooled testing. This particular program that is free right now from the Department of Ed would require, if a pool came back with a positive, all members of that pool would have to quarantine until such time they were able to be given a reflex test. So there are some areas of that we still have to examine to make sure it's the right opportunity for us. In terms of funding, we're always looking at funding, and I always look to Jean, and I'm sure she'll share it with whatever decision, whether we would look to some of our money that has been provided for this kind of opportunity, stimulus money or something like that. So again, we've attended the webinar, we have all the information. It is the extension of the BINEX program that you're talking about from the beginning, and we are looking into it. So as soon as we have more information, we'll bring it forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So the second item that I have for you tonight is some student learning time regulations. So the Board of Secondary and Elementary Ed, and that's different from the Department of Ed, that's the Board of Ed. They're the ones who actually change regulations when they need to be changed. They voted on amendments to the Massachusetts Student Learning Time Regulations on December 15th. So these amendments establish minimum levels for live instruction that all districts must provide. So the first thing I want to do is clarify for you their definition of live instruction. We in Beverly call it in-person or remote. And what the Board of Ed has coined is this live instruction, which is actually in-person or synchronous. So some remote instruction is synchronous. So some remote instruction qualifies for live instruction. That would be, for example, if you were in a remote setting and you were live with the teacher for the entire block or for a period of time during that instructional block. So we were charged with submitting to the Department of Ed, looking at all of the schedules. They looked at the beginning at grades 1, 4, 7, and 10. We had to submit to them the number of hours that students were live with teachers. That means either in-person or in synchronous opportunities. With that first submission, Beverly received preliminary clearance because as a district, the average number of our hours across all four of those grade levels met the 35-hour requirement for a 10-day period. However, an additional part of the amendment is that you can't stop there. You then have to examine each level and each grade and make sure that they are also in compliance. And so when we took a closer look at that, while we were cleared for the average for the district. There were some grade levels that we needed to take a look at and increase the live opportunities for students. So what we've done is make some modifications to some schedules. It actually required us to meet with the union and impact bargain some changes to our original MOA that we had entered into in September. And so we've done that. And so I'm going to share with you what those adjustments are that we're going to be moving forward with. I'm going to do it by grade level span because the changes really came in spans rather than actual just buildings. So at the middle school, grades 5 and 6 were required to extend their live instruction by 3 hours a week. So to accomplish this, just so you know, were you trying to take a picture? These will be online. These will all be online. These will all be online on the website tomorrow. Ellen will put them up. So to accomplish this, we have reached an agreement to extend the concurrent instruction that currently happens in the Connect In sessions on the 4 rotating in-person days to 30 minutes at the start of each teacher team session. So students have 2 team sessions, one with one teacher and one with another. We've increased the connecting in period of time in those sessions to 30 minutes. That gave us an additional 20 minutes in each session. We also extended the live instructional periods on Wednesday, which at the middle school is a remote day, to 8:30 to 10, which is now 90 minutes there, and to 1:30 to 3, which I think already was in place. I don't think that's actually an extension. And then finally, a global app class on Wednesdays shifted from an asynchronous global apps on the choice board to a synchronous lesson with the live teacher. And so this additional time will bring the grade levels into compliance. Sorry about that. I've lost my... I know you guys didn't lose it, but I seem to have. Apologize. I'm trying to get back to there we go. This additional time will bring the grade levels into compliance with the requirement, and these modifications to the instruction will begin no later than February 1st in grades 5 and 6. This is an example. So this is not, they are working, the teachers are working with the administrators on an actual, this is just a sample of what it would look like, but I wanted to demonstrate to you where that time increased. So you'll see that in the morning, and I believe actually technically, this is why I said the teachers are working on an actual schedule. I believe the remote begins at 8:30 for students in 5th and 6th grade, or is planning to begin at 8:30. But it will, what they've done is that connect in the morning will be a 30-minute connect in, and the connect in the midday will also be extended to the 30 minutes. On the Wednesday, the team meeting, which is currently 60 minutes, is extended to 90 minutes. And the global app on Wednesdays shifts from an asynchronous opportunity to a synchronous opportunity. And then again, the synchronous time in the afternoon is 90 minutes. And then Friday is a repeat of Tuesday, because those are the remote days for this particular sample of schedule. So that's what we're looking at 5th and 6th grade. In 7th and 8th grade, we were required to extend the live instruction by 1.5 hours per week. The 7th and 8th grade schedule actually already had more live instruction than the lower grades did. And so to accomplish this, we've also worked with the union and agreed to extend the concurrent instruction in our Connect-In sessions on the 4 rotating in-person days to 15 minutes at the start of each instructional period, of which they have 3 in a day. Additionally, we'll extend the live instructional periods on Wednesday, again, 8:30 to 10, and what they're calling a remote advisory. And so just to explain what that is, it is, I think, more of some people might call it a win block, more of an opportunity for small group instruction. And so during those 2 hours, students are broken down into smaller groups, and that is eligible as live time according to the student learning time regulations. And then finally, again, for them, a global app class on Wednesday will shift from asynchronous to synchronous and begin no later than Monday, February 1st. And this, again, is what a student schedule would look like. This example, again, shows someone that's in a cohort A. The Connect 10 goes to Connect 15 in the 3 periods. The remote student team time goes from 9 to 10 to 8:30 to 10. The remote STEM art wellness shifts from asynchronous to synchronous. And the remote advisory, win block, whatever, however you want to term it, goes to 1:15 to 3:15 with a repeat on Friday. So that's how they're going to accomplish that. And then we come to the high school. So at the high school, we were required to extend the live instruction by 3 hours per week. So this was a larger undertaking in terms of taking a look at the memorandum of agreement and what we had to do. So we have reached an agreement with the union that teachers will provide live stream video of in-person instruction to students in remote cohorts during the 4 morning blocks of in-person instruction. So that now means that if you are in person, you are attending your classes, you'll have your 4 morning blocks of 50 minutes. If you are remote on those days, on the 2 remote days, you will be live streamed to the teacher in the in-person instruction for those 4 blocks. It's a tremendous opportunity to increase live instruction for students. And we worked really hard to make sure that everyone was there. I know Julia has met with the union. She said in case this question comes up, largely in her meeting, when she shared the information, teachers were supportive of this as out of the choices of the ways to kind of move forward. So instruction in the 4 afternoon blocks will continue to be remote for the cohorts that do not intend in person on that day. So if you're in person, you're still going to have your asynchronous work in the afternoon on your in-person days. On your remote days, you're going to have 4 blocks of live stream and then your 4 blocks in the afternoon of remote. That will be synchronous. It could look a lot of different ways. It could be some small group breakouts. It could be a lot of different things, but the instruction will be divided that way. And again, we changed from first semester to second semester on February 1st, so February 1st is the date that this change will take place. This is what, and I hope Betty is okay with the schedule. I kind of made this up myself, so I think it's close to what it is. Again, it might not be the exact minutes, but I wanted to kind of give some visual depiction. So if you are in second semester and you are a cohort student who's attending in person on Monday, your in-person classes would be E, F, G, and H. They would be 50 minutes in duration. I think there are some tweaks on the minutes, but it looks pretty much like that. And during that same time, when you are live and in person in the morning, the remote students would be live streamed for those 4 classes. Then the remote class cohorts of B and C would again attend in the afternoon for the 30-minute blocks in the afternoon. And again, the minutes may be a little off, but in general, that's the idea. So I just wanted to be able to share.
Ms. Visnick, do you have a question?
I do, thank you. So did you say Mrs. Brotherton thinks, like, are we still waiting on the teachers?
We're
It's
done. We
it's
have
a done
signed-
deal.
We have a signed letter of
Okay,
agreement.
so I just want to revisit the fact that I thought that up until now, up until February 1st, there were some teachers, it's not in our MOA to have, to make a teacher live stream.
That the letter that of agreement that we came to is now they are required to live stream in the morning.
So that will change on February 1st. And so, okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Coelho, you have a question?
So potentially a child that can't make it to school because they're not feeling well or they have a doctor's appointment can jump right on if they're supposed
Well,
to
they would be
in
marked
school.
absent. If they're scheduled to be in person, they're expected to be in person. However, it does give an opportunity if students are quarantined or if there are exceptions for them to be able to do that.
And they can join the live stream and
they
still
can-
not miss school.
But it's not an option for just to choose to wake up on the Monday morning and I choose to do live stream rather than come to school. I'm
Oh, not a
scheduled to be in
choice, like if-
school. I have to be in school. It's not optional. Your days of in-person attendance requires your attendance in school. There will be some opportunity, we certainly know that we have a strong remote learning academy, and our remote learning academy students are still scheduled to be in their core content areas with our Beverly teachers in the classes they were scheduled into. It does give us some opportunity, particularly in foreign language, where we've had some real struggles with the online platform that students have been using for foreign language. So we are looking to see what Remote Learning Academy might be able to leverage as a result of this in foreign language and maybe in some of our lower enrolled expressive arts, electives, sorry. However, this is not an option to just choose to be remote and only do remote during this. The teachers are doing a live stream model where their in-person students are scheduled to be in person and remote students access the live stream of the in-person instruction.
Ms. Visnick?
So, Dr. Turchik, would you please speak to the question that I asked you earlier this week about a certain kind of the time on learning for, I forget the name of it, but we don't do it.
Yes. No, in particular, you asked about a platform called Edgenuity. So when we were all working hard to try to figure out how we would serve students that were remote, the Department of Ed offered out a couple of partners. One of them was Edgenuity. We do not use Edgenuity. The licenses were not really available for us, and they came at a cost. We already partner with GradPoint, which is who we do use for some of those elective classes. However, your question had been, will that count as live instruction? The Department of Ed is determining compliance with the regulation amendment to be based on your primary model of instruction. So in Beverly, the primary model of instruction is the hybrid model. So technically, our compliance around number of minutes is measured based on a typical student attending a hybrid model in one of our schools. We still think it's important that our remote learning opportunity, our remote learning academy meets the same level of instruction, but I don't think we are, I think we are pretty we are in excess already of what the requirements were if we were a remote district. But our compliance will be based on hybrid model.
So thank you for clarifying that, because that was a question from our community. So thank you.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Trocheck on this topic? Okay, thank you, Dr. Trocheck.
All right, thank you. And so the next thing that I have, and I'm going to jump off the sharing and allow Dr. Flaherty to share. She's going to present some of the findings from the middle school and high school parent surveys.
So I think it was either the last meeting or the meeting before that, we had presented the parent survey data from the elementary level. And so we wanted to come back and give you the same, relatively same questions, but from the high school and middle school parent surveys, which are both complete. This will show you that we're going to start with the middle school. I think both the middle school and high school would have liked higher levels of responses. The high school's is significantly higher than the middle school, but we had 334 responses from our middle school parents. You can see the breakdown is quite consistent between 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You'll see here there's some smaller slices of the pie, and I believe that's probably siblings of parents that filled that out because they did allow you to put in K to 12 how many where your students were. So one of the questions that was asked was, does my child appears to feel happy and healthy in the hybrid / in-person model? 62.7% of those that responded said that they strongly agree or agree. 16.5% said that they strongly disagreed or disagree. And I think this isn't unusual when you think about middle school and how important the social connections and friends are, that this is a little bit higher than what we saw when we were looking at the elementary responses. My child and family have access to enough healthy food on a daily basis. 93.2% responded that they agreed or strongly agreed, and 3.3% said that they strongly disagreed. Now, one of the questions that was asked when we talked about elementary was whether we collected email addresses or if it was anonymous. The middle school did collect email addresses so that they knew how to reach back out to families. And the high school was an anonymous survey, but they did leave room at the end for families if they wanted to have contact to leave that information for them to answer. My family has been accessing free meals. I think you'll see at both the high school and the middle school. I was very pleased to see that our lunch and breakfast program has been very well received, and it is helping families tremendously. 61.4% of the families indicated that they had accessed the free meals from the district at least some of the time. How easy or difficult has it been for your child to fully engage in the afternoon portion? So this at the middle school is when they do their remote learning once they leave. And you can see it was fairly evenly split between very easy, somewhat easy. The yellow area is neutral. And then we still had about a quarter of our students that found it to be difficult, and 6% that found it very difficult. This was asking about a family's experience with technology and device connectivity. You'll see that 94.7% reported that they had little or no problems with technology or device connectivity. And we did have 1.8 or 6 people that identified that they needed assistance getting connectivity. And so we will have that information in the middle school. We'll be reaching out to those families. This asked about a parent's perception of how their child is experiencing the hybrid model. And you can see that the predominance is between the 3, 4, and 5, but we do still have a significant number, about 24% of people that are rating it a 1 or a 2. But overall, it was very positive outcome. And that is the middle school survey results. And now we'll move on to the high school. Again, we had almost 600 responses for the high school, and you can see that it was very evenly split amongst the grade levels of responses. This asked if what cohort their student was in, or if they were in RLA. And you can see the breakdown there for our 3 cohorts. And we did have 10.6%, or about 63 responses from the Remote Learning Academy. I'm going to talk about that in one of the other questions that we get to in a moment. So this was trying to access some of the same information about access to food on a daily basis. 90.8% either strongly agreed or agreed that they do have access to good, healthy food. 5% strongly disagreed or disagreed. And in the survey questions itself, you'll see that there was a spot that allowed parents to provide their contact information if they would like to have somebody reach out to help them learn where they can get resources to healthy food. And again, here, it's even much higher because the students are grabbing lunch as they're leaving, and 93% had indicated that they had at least sometime accessed the district meals for breakfast and lunch. This asked about how children feel, if they feel safe and secure when they're either in the live cohort, on their remote days, or in the Remote Learning Academy. You can see from here, on the far left is the live cohort, and it's very highly, strongly agree that their child feels safe. It goes up even more for the indication for remote access. This raised some flags for me as far as I think we need to do a separate Remote Learning Academy survey, because some of the questions were, I think, confusing, and some of the people answered not applicable in multiple areas. And I think that the way that the questions were worded were a little bit difficult. So I think that we will be doing a district survey specifically with Remote Learning Academy
I
questions.
think Ms. Taylor has a comment. Go ahead, Ms. Taylor.
I understand what you're saying, Dr. Flaherty. I think the high not applicable is if you weren't in remote, your child wasn't in remote learning academy, you didn't answer that last question.
That's what I think. But I think that we want to find some of the, that happened in the, a future question with the curriculum as well. And so I just think that district-wide, we want to get some specific information around Remote Learning Academy.
Okay.
Here, very high, 97.1% of our families reported not having any problems or just minor problems with technology and device connectivity. And 2.7 reported that they had some repeated problems with technology, but nobody had indicated that they did not have access to internet or connectivity.
Dr. Flaherty, before you go too much further, I think Dr. McKenzie, you have a question?
I do. There were a few slides back, but we can revisit at the end. With the food data, it seemed like it was in the inverse. So there were a large percentage of the high schoolers saying they actually didn't access the food, and I'm wondering if that was either a typo or if there's a unique reason that we think they're not doing so. So on that slide right there where it said 74%, if you go back to, so 72%.
This one?
Has access, and then we went to the next one where it was accessing food. So it says no for 71%, which is a lot higher than I thought. So I don't know if that's what we were, in that here it says 93 for
Oh,
access.
that was my
Okay.
that's my mistake.
So which one do you think should be?
This is that they're not accessing, that
Okay.
not a high number are not accessing them. Yeah,
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that.
color blindness. And then this slide asked about the academic workload for my child on their live cohort days, their remote days, and then the Remote Learning Academy. And so for our live days, overwhelmingly, the response was appropriate, but you can see that there are some parents that think that it's too light and some that think it's too heavy. And I was actually a little bit surprised to see that when we moved to the remote day, that we had more parents thinking that the workload was too heavy versus too light. This was, as we think about mental health and social emotional health of our high school students, we wanted to make sure that they knew how to access their guidance counselor and adjustment counselor. And overwhelmingly, well, we still have some students, about 10%, that we need to make sure they know how to access their guidance counselor. Overwhelmingly, students do know how to. And then this was a question about extracurricular. So this was different than, this wasn't on either the middle school or the elementary survey. And I think that this is, shows how disappointed some of our students are about changes that have been made to clubs and extracurricular and some of the changes that have happened with athletics. So this is much better than it was in the spring of last year when our athletes couldn't, or extracurricular activities were not happening really at all. But we still have some improvements to do. Mrs. Taylor, would you like to make a comment on that?
No, I don't have anything to add. I also think that aside from athletics itself, which probably is the most visible, my sense in later comments from parents, there might be more of a frustration with communicating it out. Some people didn't know of what was available. So we've been working on improving that.
Thank you. And then the question was how satisfied parents were with the communication from the high school, and 73.7% either strongly agreed or agreed that they were satisfied, and about 10% said that they disagreed or strongly disagreed about communication from the high school. Our next steps, I know that Mrs. Taylor told me today that they're finalizing their student survey, and they want to be able to get that information before students change semester, so it's planned to go out at the end of January. The middle school survey is almost ready to go out. In fact, Miss Oliver said that she's almost ready to hit the send button. I believe that we should do a specific RLA survey to parents and families that are participating in the Remote Learning Academy this year. We have always planned to do a mid-year check-in with parents, and since they've just finished one survey, we've pushed it out a couple of weeks, and we will do a district survey anonymously after February break. And we would then resurvey parents and students at the end of the year. This would capture families that were in second semester at the high school, and will also give us a way to progress monitor, because we would have done middle school and elementary at the beginning, the middle, and then the end of the year to monitor how the questions progress from there. And that is the survey data. Each of the surveys do have comment sections, and the principals and their administrative teams are going through that and looking at all of the comments that came in as well.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Excuse me. Are there any other questions from the committee on this topic? Ms. Robinson?
This really isn't for, about the survey, but thank you for providing all that information. That was great. I just wanted to get out there just some things you may not know the answers to right now, but just things that I've heard that people are wondering about, that if we can look into. So PSAT dates, if anybody is aware, I thought it was,
There are dates that are set.
there are dates.
Yep.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
We are offering one opportunity for a in-school PSAT for juniors. That is June 26th. We're going to do it during the school day. We've had approximately 189 juniors sign up for that. That is the only in-school opportunity that the College Board is offering for the year. So we are offering a session for our juniors.
Betty, I think that's January 26th, correct?
What did I say?
June.
Way ahead of everybody. Yes, it is January.
We're all looking forward to June. So there's that. And any word on MCAS for grades 10 and 11? What
Yes.
is happening?
Grade 10 will have ELA and math in May. Grade 11 was originally scheduled by the state to be in January. They have since deferred that, and I'm making further decisions. I think they're tentatively planning for the spring, but they have not determined a date. Our freshmen will be taking their science MCAS if they took first semester bio in the first week in February 6th, 7th and 8th. And then if they took bio for second semester, it'll occur in May.
Okay.
Just to expand on that past the high school, we are being told that the MCAS for grades 3 through 8 will take place this spring, but with modifications. The hope is that it will only be one day of testing, so they'll just take one section instead of two. And the approach to it is much more diagnostic than to be accountable or, ranking school districts like they normally would. But there's a very strong feeling that we want to start getting some data on how students are doing and if there's any learning loss. And so that's what we're looking for. It'll probably still be a little bit later in the year, so we're probably looking at a May timeframe. We haven't gotten the exact dates yet.
But the 10 and possibly 11 would be a similar MCAS to what they were used to. But do we even know that yet?
I think that, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I think one is a legacy and one is a next gen. Am I correct, Betty? So I think 11
Yeah.
is legacy and 10 is next gen.
That's my understanding, yes.
So legacy would be the older version on the older standards, and the next gen is the newer standards in a digital format, I believe.
Right.
And if we have any 12th graders who have not yet passed, then they will not have to take the test. It'll be like last year, and they'll be able to show proficiency through grade and coursework.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just one other, any word on teachers being vaccinated?
Nope.
Nothing, okay. Just wanted to get that out there. Thank you.
Ms. Visnick?
Thank you. Either of you. Are we doing anything like the one question that said, do you feel safe? Are we trying to do any kind of either home visits or outreach to families that we know, for instance, families that got lost, didn't come back to school, or, this was an anonymous survey, so I don't know how much you can do with that data. But given that we had some number of families say, I don't feel safe, what are we doing about that?
I will let Mrs. Taylor talk about the high school, but I do know that our principals and assistant principals from K to 8 have been going out and doing home visits and connecting with families, either by phone, going out. If they don't hear from them, they can use the SRO. They ask for a safety check, and the officer will go and check on the family as well. So they have been tracing down students.
And before Ms. Taylor speaks, do we have a sense, compared to last spring, how many students we've kind of lost? Right, that didn't come, that aren't reporting into classes, right, that are just.
So we've been tracking attendance very carefully, and when we look to attendance, we start with any excessive absences over, say, 10 days. And we've been tracking that. We narrowed that down. If it gets up to 20 days, then that's when we begin to take a look at, dispatching someone out or trying to find out where they are or do that. I am going to let Mrs. Taylor answer, because I do know that at the high school, they have taken some measures to kind of do some of those things. In terms of a number,
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but we're using 10 days as the cutoff for excessive absences. And then we have the names, and we'll talk with the principals and say, what do we know about this kid? What are we doing? There have been parent meetings where the parents come in. I've said now, when you get to the point where we've tried to bring some of our elementary students that were in RLA but not really participating. They came back after vacation, and they're now going to be doing in person. So we're trying to encourage that if we see that it's not working for remote learning. Both the middle school and the high school are starting kind of intervention labs where if there are students that are not participating on their remote pieces, we are bringing them in so they can do their remote part of their day from here, and so they can have more supervision with that. And we're going to start holding some meetings now, moving it up into the district level and having us participate with parents so that they can see that we might have to make decisions about whether students would be able to be ready to be successful in the next year if we can't get them in, and try to work that angle, kind of good cop, bad cop, if it hasn't been working, and trying to bring the students back in so that we can get them prepared to move on next year.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Taylor?
Did Betty respond to the high school question?
Yeah, well, I would be echoing a lot of the things that Dr. Trocheck and Dr. Flaherty said, but we do keep track of our attendance and do pretty vigorous outreach between guidance and the assistant principals. We do take advantage of help from our school resource officer when we can. We've done also home visits and check-ins with people. We've set up 2 tiers of intervention. Students who are disappearing at remote learning opportunities, we're having them come in the afternoon, and they're doing their remote learning with us under supervision. And then if it has more to do with overall academic weaknesses as opposed to engagement, we do have some students coming in on other cohort days so that they get some direct instruction. Our school adjustment counselors, the guidance, And the administration and health office meet regularly to review where students are at different phases and what kinds of intervention. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that our special education teachers are also a part of that, in that they do a lot of initial reach out to families and finding out what's going on. So we've been taking a look at our data and been pretty vigorous about finding out where our students are and what's going on with them. And we've been able to bring some students back. There's a small handful of people that we're having problems connecting with, but I will tell you, and I don't have a number, but I will tell you, when we look over that group, it's the group that we have problems with every school year. So we continue to do outreach, but when we really come to the groups that we're just not connecting with, it's the same students and families that we've dealt with every year. But we've had a lot of success bringing kids in and having them start again with us.
Okay, the other presentation that I have this evening, Mr. Milady and Ms. Abel asked that I bring it and show the entire school committee. This was presented at a recent CISL meeting, and it was really done as a way to give an indication of how much we are using data and how important it is, especially in the times that we're in now, to be able to progress monitor and help students to be able to reach grade level. The focus was really at this meeting was at the an elementary lens, because it lends itself to being able to show you on an individual class level how data is being used. However, it's also being utilized very strongly at the middle school and at the high school as well. This is just kind of an overview that lets you know what happened with our fall benchmark testing in grades K through 8. We purposely chose in the fall, which we would normally give the first benchmark testing of the current grade level as kind of like a pretest to see where students were on, say, the grade 4 benchmark. But what we chose was to purposely go back and in the fall and give the current year's spring benchmark test. So if I am a 4th grade student in the fall, I took the end of the year 3rd grade benchmark. And we did that for several reasons. We did, even though we were in closure at the end of the year, we did give our end of the year benchmarks, and we had reported back to you that we were actually very pleased with where students had ended the year, and they were pretty much on track with where we would have been in a typical year. We wanted to see if there was any additional summer learning loss, and we also wanted to be able to give the teachers in the 4th grade a good look at where students' actual skill levels were as they were coming into that year. So instead of giving the pretest, we decided to give the end of the previous year benchmark. And that would allow for stronger progress monitoring of grade level skills and standards. The winter benchmark, which is going on right now, starting in January and will finish by the end of the month. The assessments for grades 3 through 8 are taken in Linkit, and as you'll see, several of the high school tests are as well. In addition, we have some common assessments that are given, and this will be the mid-year check-in on the current grade level. And this will be done throughout the month of January. And one of the things that's important to know about the Linkit test, and you'll see as we go through some of the future slides, is that it really allows us to take the test results and compare them to current MCAS, and it will be a good predictor of where a student will fall on grade level standards and benchmarks. At the high school, they're testing this week in Linkit for ELA and math, and world language is giving a common assessment, which they did in September and will now do. We still are working because science is so broken into so many different subjects. That was some of the work that we were starting last year as the COVID and remote hit. And so there are still work to be done in science. So at the elementary level and at the middle school, because we're on trimesters, they meet 3 times a year. And they meet in the fall, mid-year, and then again in the spring to do end of the year planning, and then helping to group students for teachers and for what teacher would be a good match for that student for the upcoming school year. They will look and review and analyze the data. They use it also to create instructional groupings and to plan both individual instruction and grade and whole class instruction. So what do we mean when we review and analyze the data? This gives you a quick snapshot of one type of data that we use, but one of the ways that we were showing Sissel about it was how it's become very color coordinated. So at a very quick look, once a teacher's been trained, they can really progress monitor their entire class. And you'll see that the blue is showing you students that are exceeding the current grade level standards. The green is students that are on or meeting expectations. The yellow are on the bubble. They're almost there, but not quite yet. And then the red would be students that would still need some intensive support in each of those areas. And you can see from up above, this is the Dibbles test, the Dibbles 8 test, and this goes through all of the functions of reading and breaks them down into individual categories. This, as I had mentioned before, shows you the Linkit data, and over here on you can see the color coding here. The green will show you is the student that is meeting expectations. A yellow is a bubble, which means that they're almost there, but not quite. And then the gold color or orange color here lets you know that they are approaching, but they still need some work. This corresponds with the standards that are over here, and so that they can look at where a whole class is on a specific question, a specific standard, and then use that data to look at individual students or a whole class. This is a sample of what we've done for the writing benchmark, but we have a calendar like this for math as well as for reading. It breaks it down into trimesters. This is what every school follows, so that we're giving common assessments across each of the schools, and it allows us to compare data across schools and really lends to, you've heard us use the word this year, our roadmap, our curriculum roadmap. Well, we're also doing that with assessments. And so we can really take a look at, from a district level, where our strengths and weaknesses are, as well as at the individual school level. So this will show you by grade level. It has the rubrics on the bottom, and then it will tell you specifically the dates when a test should be given, so that we have the same window of time that students are being assessed, and that helps with being able to analyze the data and make it more comparable. So then, once you get all the data, what does that mean? Well, this will show you a 4-square. And what we mean by that is literally it is just broken into 4 squares. And the teacher can then take the results of that data and break students into 4 different groups. So your upper left-hand corner are students that were on or above grade level in both comprehension and on the test composition. Here, we have students that were on or above with reading fluency, but below in comprehension. The bottom left were students that were below with oral fluency, but on or above with reading comprehension. And then our lower right are students that were below in both reading fluency and comprehension. The teacher can then take that data and plan their instruction for the entire class. So here you see our students that were above in the, that upper left-hand corner. What does that mean? It means that they will get core instruction, but they also need to have extensions or enrichment so that we can push them to even higher levels. It says who will be delivering that intervention, and do they need progress monitoring? No. Then you have your students that were in the upper right-hand corner. It will tell you what specific intervention they will need, who would be providing it, and how often that student or those students should be progress monitored. And then it goes through so that you handle all of the students. And it's a very concise and laid out roadmap for how to help students to close their learning gap. So while they are doing these tests 3 times a year, we have ongoing progress monitoring at grade level meetings that happen twice a month. And with this year, while we are remote, we are also having grade level meetings once a month across all of the schools. So all of the first grade teachers across the district meet once a month, all of the third grade, fourth grade, and each of the principals have been working with one grade level so that they have an administrative guidance as well. And then the teachers at each of those 3 trimesters have to come look at all their data, and you'll see we're going to highlight in a minute one of the schools at North Beverly, although similar actions happen across each of the schools. They have what they call data stories, and you'll be so impressed to see how well our teachers are using data and how it's just kind of second nature to them now. And they crave it. They want the data in order to be able to make good decisions for their students. And so this is a data story, and the teachers, again, as I had mentioned, they come together. And previous to this, administrators would give teachers their data, and there was no real buy-in for it. And so now the teachers themselves are looking at and analyzing the data, and they come in and talk about the data and their kids to their principal and coaches at each of the grade levels. This shows you just that chart that we were looking at earlier, how a teacher can then look at all of their color coding for each of the areas and make some decisions about individual students. So down on the lower piece here is an example of what a data story may look like. It gives you the percentages of their actual scores, but then it also tries to humanize and look at the individual student as a person and not just a statistic or a piece of data. So the question is, what this teacher sees as strengths and also his areas for growth. He likes math, especially multiplication and division, creative activities. He's a risk taker. An area of growth is writing for him, and they talk about how he's grown in his writing and feels more confident. What do I see? The teacher sees a brilliant, curious student who needs to be challenged as much as possible. How can I best meet his needs? And that's talking about who the student is as an individual learner. When we talk about our Linkit data, and I think it's important for you to see how important this data is and how it's used. It is a big expense in the budget each year when you approve it, but it's one that gives us a tremendous amount of tools in order to look at and be able to help all of our students to reach their maximal potential. And this will show you up here with the Linkit data. We saw this earlier about how it tells you how each of your students are doing and gives you a color code that you can work on. But it then allows you to also show how your students are doing in comparison to your school and also to the district. So again, it's trying to bring that tight roadmap together so that all students are having the same outstanding experience and getting their needs met, regardless of what individual school you are attending. It also allows them to ask some questions about if you see a large number of students that were struggling on a specific question, to then go in and ask a little bit further and think a little bit further about what to do. So if an entire class is struggling, you can then ask a question: is this a curriculum issue? Was it something that I didn't cover within my teaching? Is it an instruction issue, which means that maybe I didn't teach it or I taught it, but the students didn't learn what I was teaching? And then is it an assessment issue? So was there language or vocabulary maybe in a question that the students later on demonstrated they know how to do the skill, but they didn't understand what the question was asking them? So I need to learn how to use varied vocabulary with my students when we're looking at questions. Yes.
Dr. McKenzie, your question?
Sure, I have a couple questions, but I'll just be brief on this one. I'm curious about how we help teachers distinguish instructional grouping versus tracking. Like, how do we talk about goal setting that isn't about assuming that some kids will always be at a different tier versus others? So I love the idea of the data stories that humanize the ways that students may have strengths and assets that they can bring to their own growth. But I'm always wanting to think about the human element too of, when students are sort of layered in a way that helps us to help them better, we also have to be concerned that we don't assume that they'll stay in this kind of scaffolding. And so then when we're setting goals for them, how do we ensure that we're thinking about goals that help them to break out of those particular groups so that it does not become a tracking situation?
It doesn't become a group for everything they're doing. That was just showing you one area that it's used. But we also do a lot of peer work where students are mixed and they are not kept with the same group of students for every day or every activity that they're doing. They move students around a lot within the classroom. Our elementary and middle schools are working very hard on project-based learning. So that is bringing students in that are working at all different skill levels, but they're working together on teams. And we do mixing of students within the group. So this was just looking at one specific angle of the data around a test score, but that's just a small fraction of what is actually being done with students within the day.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And then my follow-up that's just really small related to that is the one around content and how we know when it's instruction or content or students. I'm wondering, how do we ensure that instructionally that we also know when there's a content issue, meaning that it's not just that a student may not know the vocabulary, but it may culturally not be relevant to whatever their understanding of the word is. And so how do we make sure that, we are looking at the relational part of it where students are known by their teacher so that we know whether it is maybe a unique situation in terms of content and not just about specific, kind of instructional words or instructional issues, but just kind of being more aware of what the content may mean to certain students or not.
And I'll answer that in two different ways. If you hear the teachers actually giving their data stories, and I go out, they'll be starting again the first week of February, you'll see as the teacher is talking about individual students and about strengths and weaknesses, that would be information that would come up that teachers would know. They know their students. Second, one of the areas that we are working on this spring is starting to put together a group that is going to be looking at English, and we're going to be looking at getting into a curriculum cycle for review. We had the option of extending our English curriculum last spring. They tried to have us renew for 7 years, and we said we're not doing that without a complete review, specifically because we want to start looking at bias in the curriculum, our reading curriculum that we're using. And so that's work that's going to be starting this spring. We only renewed our program for 2 years so that we have a chance to review that reading program we're using at the elementary level. We are also looking at that review in math at the middle school, but I know the English teachers have been looking at books and titles that they're using as well, and in conversations with Betty, that's also something that's happening this year at the English level at the high school. But that's work that we have room to grow in, and it has started. And this was just, again, just showed you some of the reflections from the principal. And it really did go back to looking at, and I think we also had a presentation from Ms. Smith from Centerville. And the principals have all mentioned that in the beginning of the year, they did notice that students were probably several months behind where they typically would have been in a normal fall year. But at the elementary level, the model that we've chosen with the 5 days in and being able to focus on academics while they're there, the smaller class sizes, the not so many transitions during the day, that the academic growth has been tremendous. And everybody has raved about what a positive experience it has been. And if you get a chance to go out and visit one of the elementary schools, you'll see how focused everybody is, and that those gaps they have seen, for the most part, have gone away. And in some ways, the students are ahead of where they normally would be, or we would see them at this point of the year. I think the one area where they're still noticing some struggle is in our youngest at the kindergarten and first grade level. And that's because our first graders didn't have their whole kindergarten experience. And some of those foundational skills are still growing. But they are anticipating that by the end of the year that those gaps will have closed up. And that was the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Were there other questions from the committee? I appreciate you giving that presentation. I think it's important to understand the work that goes on in our classrooms. Okay, moving right along in our agenda, we have our committee reports. First up would be our Standing Committee on Finance and Facility. Ms. Visnick?
Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities last met on December 16th. One of the big things we did was wish our friend, Mr. Tim Howland, a happy retirement. We had an update from the administration around additional CVRF or COVID funding. And we, Jean and I both corrected something that I said that was incorrect, I believe, in this setting. Namely, there are a number of unemployment claims that are potentially fraudulent. And so the amount that we're paying right now to unemployment is very high, and the city council had met and they voted. And what they actually voted was to allow us to spend $55,000 of this year's budget on last year's unemployment expenses. And so you can't spend this year's money on something from last year unless you get this kind of a quote unquote override. And so what I had reported out, unfortunately, was that they voted to pay that $55,000 bill for us. And in fact, that's not what they voted. So I wanted to correct that at this level as well. Jean reports that there are, in general, unemployment claims that are being contested and protested. There have been no hearings yet. There's approximately $80,000 worth of claims that are being protested. But earlier in the pandemic, there were many more fraudulent claims, and the number of claims now is coming in lower. Okay, that's a general gist of what we talked about. And now I have the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the following grants for fiscal year 21, DESE grants for 23 CVRF school reopening in the amount of $44,413. Should I take them separately, Madam President? All right. All right.
Second.
Are there any questions? I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill? Sorry, I asked if there were any questions, and if not, I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. Mr. Malady is absent. Next one?
DPH grant in the amount of $5,000 for is a comprehensive school health service grant.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Oh, Ms. Coelho just beat you over the internet. Are there any questions on this one? Okay, I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes. And Mr. Malady is still absent, 5-0.
All right, the next set is gifts to schools. So the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the following November 2020 gifts to schools for a total of $907.02. $636.57 is for the middle school, to be spent on computer accessories. $200 is allocated to the preschool to use for a garden, and $70.45 is district-wide funds that come out of the sales of Beverly gear in our local stores.
I'll make a motion to accept those gifts to schools with gratitude.
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. I doubt there's any questions there. We always like free money, as Ms. Visnick likes to remind us. So I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes. 6-0. Okay. And
And-
then-
And we are next meeting, I believe, next week.
Yep. Okay. In Mr. Milady's absence, I will just report out that Curriculum, Instruction, and Student Life met here last week. We were joined by Principal Erin Sweeney from the Cove School. She did a wonderful presentation. Thank you to BevCam for recording it. So anyone that is interested to see what our Cove Owls have been up to, they can log in and see the beautiful presentation. They really have been enjoying the outdoor spaces over there, as well as finding creative new ways to use the spaces indoors as well to display student work. And really, she gave a lot of thanks to the staff for patience, because this is her first year being the principal there, and thanked the leadership for their support. We had reports out from our student members. It's always great to hear from our students. One of the students at the high school level, Miss Betts, sort of reported out that her gymnastics team was still having fun despite having to stay in specific cohorts and wear their masks. She said that sometimes the fully remote is hard, and I think they appreciate having the opportunity to go for in-person days, because the fully remote schedule around the holidays really showed how much screen time can sort of wear on you. But she said that teachers are understanding as well, and that they've adopted stretch breaks and those sorts of things as well. And some other students were just so grateful that they had opportunities to do some of the extracurriculars, even though they may be a little different. And then the main focus of the curriculum meeting, and again, I would encourage you to see the BevCam recording, was focusing on the topic of SEL, or social emotional learning, and mental health in our schools. And we were joined by each of the elementary principals, the middle school and the high school principals. And in particular, the elementary schools talked about the different tools in the toolkit and how they have been using responsive classrooms and the different second steps and some of the different programs to really help students, and whether it's something that's actually physically on the desk for students to remember the different color codes and figure out how they're feeling and how they can move to where they need to be for learning. It was a really good presentation. I'm not doing it any justice, so please go see the recording. But a couple of the principals reported out some of the unexpected benefits of the cohort models that we have in our elementary schools, with the smaller classrooms and, as Dr. Flaherty said, the removal of some of the transition times and even just the recess time or the outdoor time. Having to stick with your small pod or your small group gives a lot of opportunities for students to learn some of those social skills of managing different issues that come up when you don't get to just run off and be with your normal best friend, but have to work on conflict resolution or just compromise within a small cohort. But definitely see the recording if you want to learn more about how things are going on in our schools. I appreciate also Mr. Twombly at the middle school and Ms. Taylor at the high school spending time with us to talk about the specific opportunities that are available for students at those levels as well. So we will next meet on February 3rd for curriculum instruction. I don't remember the topic offhand. Oh, wait. Do we have the topics? Not yet. That's all right. We won't put you on the spot.
It's program of studies for the high school.
That's right. Okay. And for negotiating subcommittee, it's kind of a blur. We've had lots of meetings since our December meeting, so I'll just report out that we've met with units A, B, C, and the ASME units for cafe, transportation, and clerical, which we'll now be referring to as school administrative assistants. That will be part of the end of our agenda this evening. In terms of policy review subcommittee, I still have some cleanup work to do there, and that is my New Year's resolution to get us back on track. Our next agenda item is communications from school committee members. So this is a time when we typically report out some of the general communications that have come in to us. I don't know if anyone has. Ms. Bisnick, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Madam President. I had a decent amount of communication around the fact that our hockey team had to take a week out of their schedule due to out of school transmission amongst the team and how that was being handled. And Dr. Turocek got to hear, actually Dr. Turocek got to hear a lot from me over the last probably 2 weeks. We talked, I spoke with her about the community spread and the spikes and the various learning models. And the question I asked earlier about the testing, the question I asked about learning time. Something I haven't brought up yet is that someone asked me about the school rankings. And so when you, I know there's different groups that do it. And Dr. Flaherty, you mentioned something earlier about the MCAS tests this year not being used in those formulas. But the question is whether we work with those entities who put out their rankings, and if not, can we? Because, for instance, there's at least one out there right now that still lists our middle school as 6 to 8. So clearly they're behind, and it would be good if we could work with them and update that. A lot of positive comments around the fact that the day after the events at the Capitol, our teachers gave their classes a chance to discuss that. A lot of good comments about that. And lastly, I want to say I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting the other day, and Joan Lovely and Jerry Paracella were on there, and they were talking about, are we going to reopen? When is money going to come in? This, was actually a really good meeting. However, I will say that because it's the Chamber of Commerce, they're very focused on business. And there was at least one person brought up a question about, children should be kept at home, schools should be closed, and the businesses should be allowed to be open. And so I did just put into the chat that we have had no school transmissions, and someone else put in the chat, well, what does a working parent do if their business reopens and school is closed? But I bring that up because I think that maybe we want to, just like the PTO meetings, try to maybe be a little bit more involved in the chamber meetings, especially if that's going to be, if we have a sense of they might talk about something like that on their agenda.
Thank you for that report out, Ms. Visnick. Are there other members? I will call on myself real quickly. I did have a number of PTO interactions so far this month. I have another one scheduled tomorrow at the middle school that I plan to attend. I don't know if anyone else also wants to attend, but I have 2 kids here. That resulted in some follow-up emails, and in particular related to the mental health supports that we offer. And I'm grateful that Dr. Flaherty, you made a connection with someone from the AIR School. But that's really the limited interaction has been with the PTO meetings. I think that when we do visit the PTOs, we encourage them to spread the word that we're available and we're their community resource. We do have the standard communication. People should always go to their child's teacher first, or their principal, or the administration for particular issues, but for general issues. And the plug that I made is we're starting our budget season and our budget discussions. It seems like we just barely finished the last ones, but this is the time where the community really needs to make sure their voices are heard because May is too late. So that's been the gist of it. I think, Ms. Robinson, you had some communications?
Yes, so I attended the North Beverly PTO. I'm sorry. I attended the North Beverly PTO meeting, and one of the things that struck me was how one thing that's missing from our schools this year is bringing in enrichment opportunities. And the fact that we have, I mean, what we see in CISO, what we hear here, we have very creative, innovative experts who are on our staff who we might want to really start thinking about, like, you know, considering our teachers to do their own enrichment, if they want to do their own enrichment opportunities to, you know, maybe think about that instead of spending an awful lot of money on bringing in experts all the time, which we can't do this year anyway. Maybe allowing our teachers to, you know, put our money into the people who are already the experts.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Final call? Okay, as I explained at the start of our meeting, the school committee will enter into a brief executive session, and during this time, the BevCam streaming will not have any volume. So if you're watching us at home or watching a recorded version later, there's no technical difficulty. It's by design that we will be shutting down the audio while the school committee confidentially takes care of a little bit of business. We will return to open session, I anticipate in about 3 to 5 minutes. We'll return to open session and we'll invite members that are on the Zoom that need to rejoin to do so at that time. I think we're actually in exec right now with who we have online. So with that, the chair moves to convene an executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Number 7 and number 3. Purpose 7, to review and approve the minutes from the following executive session meeting of the Beverly School Committee, December 9th, 2020, and January 6th, 2021. And purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with Units A, Units B, Unit C, and the ASME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee, and to return to open session. So I have made that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bisnick. I will now call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. That's a vote of 6-0. Mr. Malady is still absent. So BevCam, if you would, shut off our Yeah,
This meeting is being recorded.
yeah, it just does it in little chunks. It goes 0, 1, 2. That's how it starts for me. Okay, the Beverly School Committee is returning to open session. I can try to start the closed captioning again. Oh, I need to let's do this again for Mayor Cahill. Yep. Mayor Cahill, we're calling back to order the Beverly School Committee. Thank you for dialing back in. Sorry we left you hanging there for a moment in the waiting room. Our first agenda item is to vote on the Unit A contract. We entered into a memorandum of agreement with our Unit A on December 22nd, and it was ratified by Unit A. And so tonight, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Is there any discussion at the table? Ms. Coelho?
I'd like to make a motion to amend Unit A, Article 1,
Okay.
with the agreement commencing September 1st, 2020, and ending August 31st, 2020. It should be 2021.
Thank you. So Ms. Coelho has found a slight typographical error where we put 2020, and it is clearly intended to be 2021 for the end of the school year, for the end of this year. So with a friendly amendment, we're taking a motion to approve the Unit A memorandum of agreement. Do I have a second?
On the amendment, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I guess we have to vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the actual agreement, just to completely follow Robert's rules. So, Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. Okay, so now the main motion is to approve the Unit A contract. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
and Rachel Abel, yes. By a vote of 6-0, the Beverly Public School Committee has approved the Unit A contract. Yeah, jazz hands, okay. Our next unit is Unit B, and we reached the MOA with this group on January 7th? I've already forgotten. Yeah, January 7th, and they have ratified as of yesterday. So I would entertain a motion for the Beverly School Committee to approve the Unit B contract.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Ms. Coelho. I don't believe we found any typographical errors. Is there any comments or discussion before we do a roll call vote? Don't see any hands. Okay, I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
and Rachel Abel, yes. By a vote of 6-0, we have also accepted the Unit B contract. And I'll follow up with Ms. Brotherton on Unit A to. Okay, so we already had to initial one typographical error, so I'll coordinate with Ms. Brotherton to fix that other typographical error. I'm sure they would appreciate it. Okay, and with that, we have no other
Madam
business.
President,
Yes,
might I say something?
you may, Mayor Cahill.
I just want to say publicly thank you to you, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Milady, for being on the negotiating subcommittee, because we learned just how much work goes into that. You've all done amazing work. Thank you. And to your counterparts for Unit A and Unit B, representing those units. And also to Mrs. Sherburne, Dr. Trochik, Dr. Flaherty. I don't want to miss anybody. Is there anybody else in
Ms.
that
Blansky,
conversation?
Ms.
we should thank?
Blansky's been there right with
Blansky, I
us.
see you there. Okay, Mrs. Blansky as well. So much work goes into this. Thank you all so very much.
Here, here.
You're welcome. Yeah, and our counterparts on each of the bargaining units, that, they've put in just as much time. So we appreciate all the cooperation. And yes, Ms. Visnick, we'll have to figure out what to do with our time. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. It's 8:59 PM. We have to call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho.
Yes.
Kenanne McKenzie,
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel. There we go, 9 PM. Thank you so much. Thank you for those who stuck with us at home. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.